I think all New Yorkers have got used to occasional acts of extreme violence. I'm thinking of attacks on the subway in particular. And we sort of got used to occasional acts of really extreme violence, which, as you say, in this case, is, to my mind, is most notable for three things. One is, as you mentioned, somebody carrying an assault rifle and not being stopped. It's just an example of that breakdown of trust that can occur where nobody intervenes because they see that the threat to them from intervening could mean the threat comes from them, and so on. The second is obviously the target. And then the third is the way in which people wanted to interpret the target. I might add as well, I mean, you could throw in the system failures that would mean that somebody who had this number of flags could be walking around Manhattan. And sadly, again, all of us who live in New York are used to the fact that very ill people roam the streets and are completely missed by the system. But that last one of the way in which people reacted to it is especially troubling because it's not a new phenomenon, but it's a replay of a phenomenon we've seen before. I think of the violence carried out by groups like the Red Brigades in the 1960s and on. In Germany, similar sort of left-wing Marxist revolutionary groups in Italy would make a target of industrialists, people they saw as capitalists. There were years in that period in which the Italian, German, and other European authorities had to deal with effectively a form of glamorized violence from the radical left that believed that kidnapping businessmen, killing capitalists was some kind of noble revolutionary act. And that at the time, also as today, seeped into a form of the mainstream culture. It was not at the center of the culture, but it was this radical fringe that would always give a pass to the groups who did this, make excuses for them, say that it was a sort of noble endeavor and much more. So as I say, it's not a new phenomenon, but it is a replay of something that has been seen sadly before.
I've been thinking about that recently, this sort of the extent to which this is a new phenomenon versus old. Because one argument there is you look at, the 1960s in the United States, there was clear defense of, the Black Panthers or the Weather Underground. If you think about Radical Chic, or if the classic Tom Wolfe essay, a great essay about New York elites celebrating the Panthers and trying to free the Panthers on trial for murder in New Haven. It does seem like if you roll the clock back to the 1960s, that is more of an elite phenomenon than it is a sort of a mass cultural phenomenon. Which is to say, the example I always like to give is that if you surveyed Americans about the Vietnam War, they were generally against the Vietnam War, and they were really, really, really against the Vietnam War protesters. They're really against the sort of vocal anti-war left by the end of the 1960s. Was here, there's been this sort of association of the Luigi Mangione phenomenon with, almost the everyman. It's not obvious to me that it's an elite phenomenon so much as something that happens across social media. Do you think that distinction is coherent?
Yes, I think there's something to it. I think in the cases you mentioned, particularly in the 60s and 70s, it's true that the main participants came from a kind of elite class. That was the case in America and in Europe. Disproportionately involving highly, highly privileged individuals who seemed to believe that they needed to, for whatever reason, exculpate their own feelings of inadequacy or guilt or whatever by involving themselves in proto-revolutionary politics. It's true, it never did quite catch on as a grassroots phenomenon. The internet, of course, allows that to happen, and it certainly allows the encouragement of a kind of, you might say that the meme culture encourages people to say things behind the guise of an avatar or whatever, which they probably wouldn't say in their own voice with their own identity, which is to continue to make excuses or valorize this. And I said actually after the Mangione case began that what you really saw with this was a test, which was, are we as a society in any way going to allow a type of vigilantism to emerge, an extreme vigilantism, whereby people decide that some people are fit to be killed in an extrajudicial manner and murdered. And if you do go down that path, watch out, because it's just hell all the way down.
It's been exactly 1 week since Charlie Kirk was assassinated at Utah Valley University. New details have emerged, though, about his alleged killer in the past week. Tyler Robinson, 22-year-old, who reportedly was texting his trans roommate that he was disturbed by the hatred in Charlie Kirk's rhetoric, led him to murder Charlie Kirk. I know we're going to get into this today, but a lot of the prosecutors and Utah officials said that Robinson was chronically online and participated in a lot of these dark places on the internet, very niche subculture discussion forums like Reddit and Discord. And there was even a note that allegedly was found under his keyboard saying, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it." So really heavy stuff. I'm glad that I have you two here to break this down for me. It didn't seem like Robinson, though, was always like this. From what I heard, he grew up in a conservative-leaning household. Even his father, when he turned him in, brought the family minister to try to persuade Robinson to turn himself in. But yeah, Robinson was a part of a conservative household. He then goes to college. I want to start with you, Rob. Do you think you could pinpoint one thing that you suspect caused the shift in Robinson's change of thinking, or that kind of escalated into this radicalization that we saw?
Yeah, well, my understanding is that, online extremism does play an important role here, but it's always hard to predict in advance. So if you have, 100 young guys like Tyler Robinson who are maybe a little bit mentally disturbed and kind of hostile and have this, aggression in them, 99 of them won't go as far as actually shooting someone. And so these
Hmm.
things are impossible to predict. But, if you have a country of 350 million people, some non-trivial percentage of them, or rather a trivial percentage of them, but in terms of raw numbers, it could be, a few dozen or a few hundred are capable of something like this.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's this is sort of the version of more left-wing radicalization. My understanding is the engravings on the ammunition
Hmm.
showed signs of interest in sort of far left politics. I read this interview in the Free Press with the journalist Andy No,
Hmm.
and he talked about how, obviously, like a lot of people are aware, one bullet said, "Hey, fascist, catch,"
Yeah.
with exclamation points. But then another bullet had the phrase, it was a title of a song called Bella Ciao, which apparently is an anthem for Antifa in the US, and it is rooted in the anti-fascist movements in Italy in the early mid 20th century.
Hmm.
And a lot of people who aren't sort of deep into the Antifa lore or whatever wouldn't understand that. I didn't understand that until I'd seen that article.
Mm.
Um, that this is something we should be aware of. A lot of people are concerned with right-wing extremism, but left-wing extremism can be obviously just as deadly.
Hmm. So I'm actually, we were talking about this earlier, coming off a 2-week digital detox.
Mm.
We tried to be not online, not on social media.
Yeah.
So sort of a crazy time to come back online.
You missed a lot.
Yeah. But honestly, I think this is like so relevant because
Mhm.
some of the things that we sort of our takeaways from this, first of all, we failed. Like we could not stay fully offline. Our lives are just so online in ways that we are not even thinking about. Like right now,
Mhm.
and it's sort of important to recognize, like, oh, I thought we could do this, and actually we couldn't fully do it. But also because taking even a substantive dial down or dial back on things, you actually, taking a step back, notice sort of like how quickly things are moving,
Mhm.
how quickly information is shared, even when we don't have the full picture always. I mean, this Jimmy Kimmel thing, and again, I'm just coming back off this digital detox, but
Yeah.
apparently, he made some comment about the shooter before we knew all the information that ended
Mhm.
up being wrong, or maybe it wasn't fully wrong, whatever it was. We didn't have the full picture, and
Mhm.
we're all sort of unfortunately culpable for, like, we all are doing this. And
Mhm.
so I think we need to think very seriously about how fast information is spreading, the the scale, the scope, and the speed. That's sort of, when I think about policy change, I think about how scale, scope, speeds were the three S's. And I think maybe it's important to think about information
Hmm.
spread this way as
Mhm.
well. Like, how many people is this information reaching? How quickly is it reaching them, and how much is reaching them? And,
Yeah.
those are important attributes for making sure that we're not riling people up into like a mob mentality.
Yeah. I think one could also argue that with social media, being the first to get a scoop is extremely beneficial.
Yep.
So people would rather go back and correct a story than have the facts straight from the beginning. So yeah, things are moving at a rapid pace, but we don't exactly always have the accurate version of reality. So
And it's really hard. Rob probably knows this better than I do, but knowing the psychological literature very well. But when we hear information,
mhm.
it's really hard to sort of then believe it's like to correct our misunderstandings, or to tell ourselves that something is actually false. Once we
Mm.
learn something, it's hard to unlearn that thing.
Mm.
And so if we take in information that ends up being wrong, we sort of have that initial idea in our head, and then and the fact that people are just getting really different information now is, I think, also sort of problematic. I mean, what I see on X, working at a right of center think tank, and what some of my more left leaning friends see on X, I mean, it's just totally different information.
Mm.
And it's not always helpful, I think.
It's so interesting. We by not acting with dignity and authority with our kids, we don't give them anything to aspire to. We're just cool versions of them. I mean, that's the idea, right?
Kids want boundaries. They want
They want
some kind of
something,
model of authority, right?
right? But they also want something to which you have achieved when they
Mm.
reach. They want milestones. They want that, naturally, when they have boundaries, they want to achieve the next level. But when your parents are just a version of you, and really they're not an more elevated version, there's nothing to aspire to. And watching them grovel to you your whole life, honestly, it really does encourage contempt when they get older. And I'm not just saying this. I interviewed in the book Joshua Coleman, a wonderful psychologist, and he works on family alienation. And one of the things that he found after sitting with hundreds of families is that very often the kids who are alienated as adults, who refuse to talk to and become estranged from their parents, were treated the most gently, and were constantly placated by their parents. And when they got to adulthood, they had really contempt for their parents.
I wonder if this is feeding into some of the radical politics we're seeing among people who are coming of age in their early 20s.
Yeah, that's interesting. What do you mean by that? Like, what would the connection be?
Well, just raised by very permissive parents, but filled with a kind of anger and a contempt for authority.
Absolutely, I think. I mean, look, they're looking for a daddy.
Yeah.
And if they don't find one in the home, they go looking for one on college campuses. And that's what you get. You get the extreme authoritarian figure of these, people shouting and marching, giving marching orders to vast numbers of kids. And I do think it encourages authoritarianism or a hunger for it. That's right. I mean, we have an entire industry of parenting experts who are giving lousy advice to parents, undermining their authority. And parental authority is the one thing we know every kid needs. We've known this since the 1960s. It's one of the oldest psychological studies. It's also one of the sturdiest, from Diana Baumrind in the 1960s, who found that loving, rule-based parenting, not unloving, not cruel, but loving, rule-based parenting, where the parents are the authority, and yes, they punish bad behavior, turns out to produce the healthiest, happiest, and most successful kids. And instead, what parenting experts have gone out and do, because they don't like this result. So what they do is they rebrand authoritative parenting as the opposite. They say, oh, yes, of course, authoritative parenting. And then what they do is they describe a parenting that is groveling, that is therapeutic, that is pleading with kids to behave, that is explaining ad infinitum. And it doesn't work. It produces more dysregulated kids. And what they also do is they rebrand bad behavior as a psychological ailment, or sometimes they even invent terms like, I know Dr. Becky has the deeply feeling kid. This is a made up term for basically a very dysregulated child who's had no punishment and no accountability.
I think part of because of the work that I do and the topics that I write about, crime being sort of number one on that list, I often am sort of tempted to start with it starts at home, right? I mean, fathers are incredibly important. They should be your first role model, right? I mean, your first sort of mold in terms of how to be a man should be looking to your father for those cues. But you're right. I mean, this is a young man, Charlie Kirk's assassin, who came from a conservative family, right? His father was a police officer. My father was a police officer. And it is scary to think that even that cannot protect against this, which I think makes the role that Charlie played in his life all the more important, because obviously this kid was radicalized outside of his home. And I think there is an asymmetry in terms of the amount of content being pushed on these issues between conservative ideas and far left ideas. And I think it's much easier to be radicalized to the left online than it is to be radicalized on the right. And it just makes me appreciate Charlie's work as Yeoman's work. It's to such a higher degree now that he's passed, and why I think it's so important that the right starts having real conversations about what needs to fill that void. And so, as we come up on time, I want to just close our conversation out by asking the two of you, if there are, if you could sort of point young men on the right to one or two male figures for them to look up to, for them to get to know through their work, who would they be and why? And
Can I
Heather, I'll
just
start
respond?
with you.
You mentioned online. I think that we've all been doing a little too facile the immediate uh, recourse to, well, it's the online radicalization that's going on. That may be, and I am not in that world, but I would say that that lets off the hook the establishment. It is impossible to
That's a
overstate
good point.
how widely a whole set of ideas are absorbed and mirrored back out into the world in every establishment institution. One of the most shocking things that's come out of the aftermath of the Kirk assassination is all these K through 12 elementary school teachers who are celebrating this. It's part of the air you breathe. And I did look up Utah Valley University, and while they don't have women's studies and gender studies and Black studies, they do have people in the communications department that are feminist, doing all that theory. They honor somebody from a nearby Utah college who was the epitome of the intersectional gay Latina feminist anti-colonialist pro-Hamas person. So even there, every part of the education establishment is, we got to airlift these kids out. We got to get them out of K through 12, get them into homeschooling, get them into classical education. And so online, it's harder to take care of. As far as the male role models, boy, that's tough. I mean, I would say for young boys, put them in I can't use the phrase Boy Scouts. It's already been feminized, but in theory, the Scouting Handbook is one of the great books, as Paul Fussell said, of male virtue. It's all about how to be a positive, courageous, loving, philanthropic male, to be patriotic, to care about honor and self-reliance. Um, so that's maybe for younger ages. And of course, the Scouts have become uh, co-ed, and so that's gone. But it's still those types of books. I guess I would go through books. I would give your boys some of the classics of male literature, of adventure, of heroism, of history, battles. So I'm spinning my wheels here, and I'll let Daniel go. And if I think of any male role model right now, I will come up with it.
So what's interesting to me is just like Andrew Cuomo was able to successfully clear the field, and there was neither a coordinated effort in the primary to pick up somebody other than him. Like it wasn't going to be Whitney Tilson, but like Whitney Tilson, who is a hedge funder, a very good guy, moderate Democrat, would have been a great mayor, in my opinion. Absolutely. There was nobody in the Whitney Tilson lane who the city's elites did not coordinate around somebody like Whitney Tilson, an alternative who was going to own the moderate lane that wasn't Cuomo. That didn't happen in the primary, and then it didn't happen after the primary was over. Clearly, there was a comprehensive failure to do that kind of, I know that people were talking about, can we get Jessica Tisch, the NYPD commissioner, to step up? Is that possible? And it didn't work. So, like, what is the failure of elite coordination, and how do you get around that? Because it seems like you guys succeeded at elite coordination. Gary Tan succeeded at elite coordination in San Francisco. God bless Gary Tan. Like what do New York City's movers and shakers need to learn? What did they get wrong?
Man, that's such a good question. I have no idea. It's it's just like all of the money and all of the smart people are on the center, sort of centrist side in San Francisco. Once we started talking about who was in charge and who was in power, it was very obvious that we needed something different. And the things that we needed were really ground floor things. It was like, crime should be illegal again, and people should stop shitting in the streets, and the schools should be open, and we shouldn't be trying to rename them rather than reopen them, like just basic shit like that. And in New York, I just don't, honestly, like I feel like it's not going to work out for you guys. I think that the demographics are totally different. I think that you have a smaller concentration of smart people, and you have a lot of smart people who are.
You can see that in the polling data.
And I think it's like, I mean, you can see the way that finance is leaving the city. I saw polling or some numbers on that was down to like 7% or something. It's such a different city. But I think it starts with just being ferocious. If you have some high status people who are like, no, socialism's really bad, and these radical leftists are fucking crazy, and it's fine to make fun of them. In fact, it's good. In fact, it's high status to make fun of them. You don't want to be seen on their side. If you can do that, then I think that's helpful. In San Francisco, that was a little bit easier because, it's like, it's a one industry town. And so if you had all the elites in that industry who were on the same side, it was like, oh, we're allowed to believe this now.
I think a lot of people who are worried about Hazel Ramamdani, who, by the way, like he won with a majority of the vote, but there was also about 1 million people who came out to vote against him and his agenda, right? So there's a very split electorate, and I suspect that there is a lot of anxiety about what he's going to do. And like, just to refresh the memories of people watching, like, this is a man who has committed to abolishing the NYPD's gang database, to dismantling the strategic response group within the NYPD, which is the group that responds to a lot of these protest gatherings, mass shootings, other large-scale events. He has now appointed a couple of police abolitionists to his transition team, which is very, very concerning. He was the only candidate who said he didn't want to increase the number of NYPD officers, which is currently on a downward trajectory due to attrition. So there are some concerning things just within the public safety space. Then you have all of the socialism stuff. So there's a lot there that I think people are worried about. But it seems to me that President Trump, his administration has a lot more leverage and a lot more on their menu to frustrate Mamdani than the other way around. Am I wrong about that?
Sure. I mean, no, you're wrong. You're right. Excuse me. I mean,
You almost broke my heart.
no. I mean, what you're saying is absolutely right. I mean, listen. I mean, at the end of the day, Trump cares about New York because it's the biggest city, and he's from here, right? He's a New Yorker. He cares about it, but it's not like New York is the core of his political base, right? So, I mean, he's the issue will be for Trump, does he want to expend that political capital? And it seems like in a lot of these cities, the answer has been yes, to try to maintain order. I mean, the public safety stuff, listen, I do think Mamdani is more of a true believer in this, maybe than de Blasio was. I mean, certainly his public positions. I do think there's significant risk. And, I think that's political risk for Mamdani too, whether he realizes it or not. It's one thing to run a campaign with, nice graphics and great social media and an attractive candidate who's friendly and focus on affordability, which is what people care about. It's another thing if public safety deteriorates. And, we saw this when his predecessor, Eric Adams, was elected. Part of the reason he was elected from sort of the right half of the Democratic spectrum was people were worried about the breakdown in public order. Now, we've seen improvement on that over the last 4 years, which is one reason why I think Mamdani wasn't paying a big political price for that. But if it reverses course, if he does some of these extreme things and shootings are going up and just the quality of life things are going down, then he's going to pay a political price for it. But do I think he's going to do some of it? Sure. And the question will be, what exactly will Trump do? But he's got a lot of degrees of freedom to do things.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I don't think that the sort of Mamdaniites have fully considered is the scope of political unpopularity of things like mass scale protests. I mean, you mentioned Eric Adams, who was elected, yes, in the wake of a crime increase and because he was sort of promising to crack down on that. But there was also a massive increase in the number of public protests and riots in New York City in 2020. I mean, the summer of 2020, the summer of love, as it's affectionately known. I mean, I came into Midtown Manhattan on June 1st of 2020, and Madison Avenue looked like a war zone. Broken glass, emptied storefronts, not because the storefronts had shut down, but because they were looted, the night before. I went into, I walked past, I think, 2 or 3 different coffee shops trying to get a cup of coffee, finally found a Starbucks that was open, but you couldn't tell because they had boarded up the windows that had been smashed out, and inside was, insane. That was really, really unpopular. And if we start to see more of what we're already starting to see, even before Zohran Mamdani takes office, I suspect that, he's looking at a one-term mayoralty, but I may be overstepping.
I think even more than the striking image of a looted storefront or a demonstration featuring masked protesters chanting unhinged things, even more than that is the sense of disorder, the sense of chaos, the sense of not knowing what tomorrow will bring. Will the Brooklyn Bridge be blocked by protesters that the mayor just allows to run free? Like, will it suddenly be open season on CEOs in New York City?
Yeah.
Right, with the groundswell of popular support. Yeah, those things do not actually have to take shape for people to say, you know what, I've had enough, right, and take the well-trod Trump path down to Florida. And that could be enough to precipitate a massive political change.